The blood still runs true among some on Solstheim, as it has for centuries. We have chosen to embrace Lord Hircine's blessing. You know it well. The speed and strength of the beast, the thrill of the hunt, the triumph of the kill. This is our purpose, our way of life. So it was for my father and his father before him, and I welcome any who walk that path. Disease, curse, blessing. Lycanthropy in Tamriel comes with many connotations depending on who you ask. For some, the Daedric-born disease is a reward, enhancing the most devoted of Hircine's followers. For others, it's a cruel affliction that pushes those who bear the disease into their most animalistic form. But what is lycanthropy? How does it work in the Elder Scrolls universe? And what the hell is a wereshark? What is up, guys? My name is Scott from Fudge Muppet, and today we are going to be looking deep into the hidden world of lycanthropes and were-creatures in the Elder Scrolls universe. Half man, half beast, these creatures have become the stuff of legend, often striking fear into the hearts of those who find themselves wandering the unbeaten trails through the woods on a cold moonlit night. As with many things that offer great power at great cost, the Daedra are wrapped up in the creation of this supernatural condition. The great lord of the hunt, Hircine himself, created the disease in order to reward his most devoted and skilled hunters, allowing his followers to spread the affliction throughout Tamriel. We do not know when the first lycanthrope was created, but in the retelling of Thane Icehammer's exploits during the Merethic era, were-creatures both exist and were hunted by the Nords. Icehammer paid dearly for his actions, eternally enraged after being wounded by Hircine's spear, then entombed alive lest he destroy Cragwallow and its inhabitants. Despite lycanthropy referring specifically to werewolves, it's become the accepted term for all were-creatures in the universe, as Varnard Kuressen writes in On Lycanthropy. Because the werewolf is the most ubiquitous of the lycanthropes, the term lycanthropy has been used since ancient days to describe the disease that transforms men into half-beast, although lycanthrope only strictly should refer to men who change into werewolves. Contracting lycanthropy is scarily easy in Tamriel, simply being in close proximity of someone afflicted with the highly contagious disease Seanese lupinus, which if left untreated will cause you to become a lycanthrope. The disease is also transmitted by wounds from were-creatures, but as dangerous as they are, survival of the initial attack is much less likely. This can be easily cured, as this method is often accidental or unwanted, but there are much faster ways to become the beast for those seeking it out. The initial disease can also be easily cured, but fully developed lycanthropy is where the process becomes a much more difficult fix. If one desires to take on the curse willingly, a rapid initial transformation can be granted by drinking the blood of a lycanthrope, with the drinker initially changing to their beastly form soon after. This excruciating process is the point of no return, committing the soul to Hircine's hunting grounds for all eternity. In some cases, the lycanthropy virus can be passed on hereditarily, even remaining dormant for generations before manifesting. For the majority of were-creatures, the change can happen monthly, weekly, or even nightly. Contrary to popular belief, the moons do not always directly influence the beastly transformation. The reality for were-creatures is vastly less structured. Some types of were-creatures are more reliant on the moons than others, like the wereboars, while others can disregard the influence entirely. When changing, lycanthropes exhibit exaggerated characteristics of the beastly strain they succumbed to. Fur, increased height, lengthened arms and shoulders, alongside enhanced speed and strength are the most common characteristics. Their striking resemblances to wolves, bears, or boars paired with an intense bloodlust and reduced willpower makes the fierce reputation conjured by uttering their names easy to understand. In the worst cases, this bloodlust can lead to losing control entirely, becoming far more beast than man, but sometimes even a mild willpower can manage to stop an affected person from going too far. Feeding upon anything they hunt, be it man or mer, or beast of the forest, were-creatures will devour the flesh of their kills to satisfy their carnal hunger. Outside their beastly forms, were-creatures show few signs of difference from normal members of their race. Perhaps small patches of fur, the occasional smell of wet dog, an immunity to disease, poor sleep, and an underlying desire to hunt are common symptoms of lycanthropic condition. Interestingly enough though, despite the bloodlust and fearsome physique, some were-creatures have been known to resist such bloodlust and attempt to make a peaceful living in nature. The enhanced senses of the creatures while transformed mean that finding food without killing is entirely possible, as told by Querbalus Primus in his account of coming to terms with his own affliction. Thereafter I lived upon nuts, fruits, buds, roots, and animals freshly dead, and this I could easily do, for when the change was upon me, my senses were so acute that I could always detect food of all sorts. But what do you do once you've become a lycanthrope? Perhaps you survive a battle with one, or seek the curse out yourself. Keeping a low profile, at least around transformation, is advised. Outside of Daedric cults and other were-creature packs, the condition is at best disliked or shunned, and at worst will mark you for immediate execution by the Imperial Guard. In civilized country, were-creatures are rarely treated with kindness due to their undeniable link with the Daedra, making a normal life inadvisable. The Bosmer's Green Pact also makes lycanthropy a frowned-upon condition. While it's not technically a manifestation of the Wild Hunt, altering one's form in any way as a pact-adhering Bosmer is unlikely to go down positively within their culture. Those who've chosen to embrace this lycanthropic affliction often roam the world as lone wolves or opt to join a pack of other lycanthropes. Choosing to band together in a pack secluded in a remote location means that they can survive as a group away from the day-to-day threats hanging over their kind in the cities. Packs like the Frostmoon Pack on the northern island of Solstheim affords them greater protection from those who are sworn to hunt and kill their kind, such as the Silver Hand. There's kinship to be found in these communities for wandering were-creatures, with some pack leaders even receiving enhanced abilities from Hircine himself. But let's put that aside for now. We have were-creatures to talk about. After all, it wouldn't be much of a complete guide if I didn't talk about each and every type of ghastly man-beast that can tear your face off with a swipe of its claws. Now, perhaps you're wandering the wilds of Tamriel. You take a turn off the beaten path after hearing a distant cry for help, hoping for some coin for your trouble, but instead of coin, what you find is a far more grisly scene. A small camp, ravaged, blood and limbs spread across the tents and bedrolls once occupied by travelling hunters. Standing amidst the carnage is Tamriel's most common were-creature, the werewolf. Speedy and strong, once transformed, werewolves stand taller than even Nords and Orcs and wider in stature. Their claws act as their deadliest weapons, slicing through their prey and those who would fight them unprepared with equal ease. Not only do werewolves have an immunity to diseases and paralysis effects, but they also have a natural kinship with predators of the wilds, meaning they're less likely to be attacked by wild wolves and bears. It would not be wise to tangle with one of these beastly creatures without silver weapons at your disposal, which inflicts greater damage upon them. Wolfsbane and belladonna are also useful herbs in an encounter. They're poison to these lycanthropes, and they're also both used in the curing of the disease Cineus lupinus. These were-creatures are the most well-documented and common species in the land of Tamriel, found all over and not in specific territories like many of the other strains of the disease. It's easy to forget that while in description these creatures are monstrous beasts, they can still retain their humanity majority of the time. Groups of werewolves have grown to hold significant sway in parts of the continent by keeping their ailment a secret, such as the Circle of Jorvaska, a leadership group within the Companions faction, all of whom are werewolves. We'll speak more about a prominent member of the circle, Kodlak Whitemane, later on in regards to curing lycanthropy, but the group as a whole gained significant influence due to their strength and leadership within the Companions. But now, for a little more bulk. If you found yourself venturing through Solstheim during the Fourth Era in search of werewolves, you're instead more likely to find a strain who've managed to become the dominant predator in the area, werebears. They have been said to inhabit the wilds of Skyrim, but we in the Fourth Era have only seen them on the island. Similar in stature to the werewolves, save for the head and claws of a grizzly bear, these were-creatures boast an impressive silhouette, dwarfing regular bears of the realm. Interestingly, the werebears seem to have a bit of a rivalry with the werewolves of Solstheim, even going as far as killing packs that call the area home. Perhaps these werebears are more suited to the Nord's harsh climate, or simply stronger when it comes to battle, but either way, these fearsome were-creatures provide quite the challenge to even the mightiest of Tamriel's fighters. Reportedly unique to Hammerfell and High Rock, wereboars are the were-creatures most attuned with the lunar cycle, forced to transform each full moon. Reminiscent of the classic werewolf shape, the heads of the transformed feature protruding tusks, walking on hoofed, furry legs. These were-creatures must kill to quench their bloodlust or suffer serious damage to themselves. In Daggerfall, this damage manifests as a reduction in their hit points, but other lycanthropes don't seem to deal with the same drawbacks. If you were to wander through Blackmarsh, Cyrodiil, or the wetter parts of elsewhere in your search for the lycanthropes of Tamriel, you may happen upon the were-lion. Little is known of this particular type of lycanthrope, but from what we know about wereboars, werebears, and werewolves, we'd assume their forms would be fairly similar. Likely atop the exaggerated but vaguely humanoid form sits a lion's face, maned and regal, with great arms stretching to fearsome paws that could take down any prey. Perhaps these creatures would roar fearsomely, once again armed with claws to swipe and tear. Despite never being seen in an Elder Scrolls game so far, On Lycanthropy by Varnard Koresson merely describes them as vile, conjuring up quite the unnerving image of these creatures should you happen upon them in the wild. Sharing a similar habitat to werelions, were-crocodiles inhabit the isolated swamps of Blackmarsh and southern Morrowind. These were-creatures, I imagine, would have a similar appearance to the Daedaroth that roam Tamriel, scaled and standing tall, with the iconic long snout of a crocodile pointing forward, ready to snap down on an attacking limb. Their tracks have been described as almost indistinguishable to that of a standard crocodile, which would suggest once again the more reptilian form similar to the Daedaroth. One interesting point here is that despite the accepted research suggesting that the type of were-creature you become is determined by the type you got the affliction from, the were-crocodile strain is said to be more common amongst the Argonians. This could be very likely due to the were-crocodile finding comfort in the swampy habitats of the Argonians, but who knows? But now we look to the skies. Native to Valenwood, were-vultures only reside in the Bosmer homeland. Perhaps these creatures, when transformed, take on a more sleek and unique form than their beastly counterparts. We would assume that, as with other winged creatures, that those afflicted with this strain may be able to take to the air, using their bird talons and beak as weapons against their prey. Alternatively, they may be more grounded and share similarities with the Hagraven, gaining beaks and feathers but losing out on the ability to fly. As mentioned earlier, the Bosmer are unlikely to take on this affliction willingly due to the Grind Pact conditions, which may explain their scarcity both in Valenwood and Tamriel as a whole. Anyone unlucky enough to end up with this strain would likely seek treatment or solitude lest they be condemned by the populace from the land they call home. Werebats hail from Valenwood alongside the were-vultures, but play a more notable role in the province. Many of these were-creatures who stand tall, arms changed into giant batwings, have come to serve the vampire families of Valenwood as guardians. Ideal for scouting and intimidation, these were-creatures are able to fly, completing the classic vampire iconography. Their large ears, muscular frame, and sharp teeth make them quite the intimidating form when transformed, perfect for keeping unwanted guests away from the vampire houses. Whether this actually is a were-creature or simply just named as such due to their appearance is hotly contested. They are marked as undead, which other lycanthropes are not, and in the service of other undead, the vampires. Some theories even go as far to suggest that they may be vampiric themselves, but the lack of damage by the sun could suggest the opposite. We've never seen one of them transform back into humanoid form, and it's entirely possible that they are still lycanthropes as well, as their name would suggest. Ultimately, it's not clear enough which camp they fall in, but it's interesting to speculate and still worth inclusion in this video. And lastly, if you believe the tales of Mayik the Liar, were-sharks are said to roam the seas that skirt Tamriel. As with other were-creatures, we presume that once again this creature would have a humanoid form, complete with legs and getting more and more shark the higher you go. Perhaps they would have limbs with fins protruding from the forearms, maybe even webbed fingers, while relying on that iconic great white shark head of teeth to decimate their foes. I personally picture them like the Street Sharks cartoon, but I'm sure if you met one in game, they'd be a tad more fearsome. Despite the beast part of this transformation being an aquatic creature, according to Mayik, some live quite the ironic life. He says, "I have only met one, but he was afraid of the water." While never seen since, there is one extra type of lycanthrope we know about in the Elder Scrolls. Sheogorath, the Mad Prince, met with Hircine on the peaks above Skyrim. Here he challenged Hircine to a battle, pitting their strongest beasts against one another. In preparation for this challenge, Hircine prepared in secret an abomination. An ancient Daedaroth he summoned, and imbued it with the foul curse of lycanthropy. Of pitch heart and jagged fang, the unspeakable horror had no peer, even among the great hunters of Hircine's sphere. On the day of the battle, Hircine's were-Daedaroth champion was greeted by a small, colourful bird, the champion of Sheogorath. Despite the speed, fury and strength of the were-Daedaroth, the bird perched on the snout of the beast, pecking at it until the were-Daedaroth was blinded and destroyed itself attempting to remove the bird. Defeated, Hircine burned the abomination, returning to his realm. But with so many varieties of were-creatures out in the world and their Daedric origins, it's no surprise that factions and individuals have risen up to oppose those who are afflicted, intentionally or not. The aforementioned Silverhand are one of the most notable of these groups, rising in direct opposition to the Circle and the Companions. These werewolf hunters managed to slay Kodlak Whitemane, but their disorganization and extreme methods lead to less success than they intended in the region of Skyrim. The Vigilant of Stendarr, established after the Oblivion Crisis, shared similar goals as the Silverhand, seeking out the destruction of Daedric influence like were-creatures, vampires, and Daedric worshippers. However, our experience with them is short-lived, as their main base of operations is destroyed by the vampires during the events of the Dawnguard storyline. So let's just say you were a were-creature living your best life in the wilderness, but one day you were unlucky enough to fall in battle to one of these hunter groups. Well, what happens then? What happens to your soul? Well, some certain lycanthropes may actually be quite pleased with the outcome. Those afflicted by lycanthropy at the time of their death are bound to spend an eternity in Hircine's hunting ground, sharing in his hunt forevermore. Depending on your view of lycanthropy as a whole, this could see you robbed of your true afterlife or offered a far better one. The hunting grounds of Hircine, his plane of oblivion, is the ideal place to be a hunter, but terrifying for the hunted. Lush forests contrast with vast open plains, while rivers and tributaries flow with crimson. Spirits of small creatures roam these environments, doomed to be hunted forever, while more monstrous creatures like bears, wolves, and Daedra inhabit endless mazes. Any mortal who finds themselves in the realm of Hircine are quickly hunted down, with werebears stalking the lands in the day and werewolves hunting alongside Hircine each night. If living as a were-creature hunting down mortals and creatures for all of time doesn't sound like your ideal afterlife, there are a few known ways to cure lycanthropy, none of which are easy. But for the truly dedicated, there is some hope to return to normalcy after the disease truly takes hold. There is a way to cure lycanthropy and rob Hircine of his owed soul, one of which was discovered during the Companion's questline in Skyrim. The Circle were practicing lycanthropes, however their affliction was passed on to them in a cruel trick, provided to them as payment by Hircine on behalf of a pact with the Glenmoral Coven. Lycanthropy was not explained to them as a permanent condition, nor was there servitude in the afterlife. For Kodlak Whitemane, the gift offered quickly soured upon their realization, and despite the power it allowed, he came to see the Daedric Prince's payment as a curse. To cure the taint of the beast on Kodlak's soul after death, the Dragonborn is able to invoke the magic from the head of a Glenmoral witch to summon Kodlak's inner beast as a spirit. Destroying that spirit exorcises the inner beast, allowing Kodlak's soul to escape servitude in Hircine's hunting grounds. Many other cures are tied to the mysterious magic of the Glenmoral Coven, as they both hold the knowledge to create simple potions that cure fully developed lycanthropy, but also can summon the inner beast spirits to exorcise the disease. For were-creatures looking to keep their affliction but avoid hunting the people of Tamriel, isolation is often the safest path. Perhaps this is why many packs find solace in the wilds, hunting wild animals, living a life in tune with the primal state of untouched nature. This course of action also lessens the fear of discovery, lest they find themselves hunted by those who wish to purge lycanthropy from the land. For those who wish to control their power and live amongst civilization, there is one ring you'll want to get your hands on. Bestowed by Hircine himself to those who please him, or his most skilled and devoted lycanthropes, the Ring of Hircine allows users to control their transformations at will. Once actually cursed with the opposite effect, but since purged, the ring means that wearers no longer face forced transformations and are able to call upon the power of the beast whenever they desire. In Blood Moon, the ring has even allowed wearers who are not lycanthropes the power to transform themselves into werewolves, but doing such a thing is rarely heard of. Speaking of rings, if you play as a werewolf, Magni of the Frostmoon Pack will also sell you rings which enhance your capabilities as a lycanthrope. The Ring of Bloodlust offers you extra damage at the cost of taking more yourself. The Ring of Instinct gives you more time to survey the world upon transformation, slowing time for a brief period. The Ring of the Hunt allows endurance on long hunts, regenerating your health while transformed, while the Ring of the Moon makes your howls last longer, striking fear into your foes. Whether or not these are gifts from Hircine or enchanted by someone, like a Glenmoral witch perhaps, we do not know. However, we do know there are also 3 relics of Hircine dating back to the origins of lycanthropy itself. They flow with the power of the Daedric Prince, allowing the holder new and enhanced powers. The first, a carved skull of the wolf itself, used by ancient shamans in the blood ceremonies that created their lineage. It is said to grant a great presence to those who prostrate themselves before it, such that those who witness their forms cower in a terror unknown except to those who have glimpsed the face of Hircine himself. In Skyrim, this manifests as your werewolf howl causing fear on those who hear it, causing them to flee in combat. The second, a thigh bone carved as the skull, but from some animal unknown. Used as some form of medicinal wand in the more ancient Brotherhood, it was said to grant a kind of heightened awareness, both in sight and smell, such that the prey could never flee too far from their senses. Enhancing your senses, this totem allows a greater sense of detect life to be used, giving the holder the tools they need to hunt the biggest and smallest prey of the wilds in Tamriel. The third, a simple drum, its mundane appearance meaning it's most likely lost to the mists of long ago time. As their fathers would beat time to summon their brethren from the fields, so too would their forebears in the blood call their allies to them with its pounding. This allows the werewolf holder to summon forth two ghostly wolf familiars, eager to fight alongside the summoner. The strength of the pack means that were-creatures who are able to call on Hircine's blessing are truly never alone in battle, fighting with the spirits of the hunt. Hircine's connection to were-creatures provides the most devoted and skilled followers with ample means to enhance their lycanthropic powers, embracing the affliction to the fullest of its potential. Despite this, many who become afflicted with this disease understandably find it terrifying. To lose control, faced with insatiable bloodlust and uncontrollable beastly transformations, blessing or curse, it's one of the more fascinating aspects of the Elder Scrolls Bestiary. But that is all, ladies and gentlemen, the complete guide to were-creatures, the lycanthropic man-beasts that roam the land, hunting and devouring, or hiding and living a peaceful primal life. From the common werewolves to the rarest were-sharks, you should now know all about them. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and before I leave you, I want to ask you a question. If you were infected with lycanthropy, which were-creature would you want to be? And would you seek a cure, or embrace Hircine's curse? Thanks again so much for watching. My name is Scott from Fudge Muppet, and I will nerd out with you in the next one.